Right, so we're now on to item 9 on page 36, which is the reclassification of Enderley Park and Lake Rotokauri Park. So thank you, Dee and Sally, for your report. Unless there's any particular items you'd like to speak to, I would like you to address some of the matters that were raised in the public forum by Derek when he spoke earlier. If you could do that, please. Thanks.
It's just checking.
They've moved them forward so that we can hear the speakers, so you're safe now.
You can floss your teeth with those ones too.
Right, off you go.
Okay, thank you. Reclassification has been requested for the following reasons. So with Lake Rotokauri Park, it is from Recreation Reserve to Local Purpose Ecological Management Reserve, and this is to align with Waikato District Council's adjoining reserve and with the Lake Rotokauri Park Management Plan. With respect to Enderley Park, it is from Recreation Reserve to Local Purpose Community Facilities Reserve, and this is to align with the current uses of Enderley Community Centre. So as you can see within the report, public notification has been completed, and this has followed the Reserves Act process outlined within section 24 of the Reserves Act. We did have only one objection received during this public notification process, and that was from what you heard from Mr. Derek, who spoke in public forum earlier on. So in terms of the information that was requested regarding the support received from Waikato Tainui, this has been sent by staff this afternoon to Mr. Derek. Unfortunately, it seems that that time frame has crossed over from when Mr. Derek was coming to the council meeting, but we have sent that information through to him. It also appears that there is some confusion between two processes underway, one being the change in classification of the reserve, and that, as I iterated before, is followed the Reserves Act process. Dee can provide an update on the community facilities review, which was raised by Mr. Derek as well.
Just on that, Sally, thank you. One of the things raised was time frames in terms of getting information to Graham and his knowledge of or notification of and the timing of that. Can you please specifically address those concerns, because those seemed to be quite important ones?
So there was contact made during the notification period by Mr. Derek. There was a discussion with...
And that was dates. Just give us dates here.
Certainly, sorry.
Yeah.
Where's Renee?
Oh, see, it was notified in July through to August, right?
26th of July through to 26th of August, which is on an item 10 of the report, and that is the month's notification that we follow under the Reserves Act.
Right.
There was, I understand, a discussion during that period around what we were trying to achieve, and there was the plan was sent through to Mr. Derek. Following that, an objection was received, and there was a further meeting to discuss that objection.
As you say, meeting, that was a meeting with Graham?
Yes, and Diane was there at that meeting.
That's correct. So,
and when was that meeting? So, look, it was recently or a few months ago?
it was
Right.
3rd of September.
To talk through the objection and what the concerns were?
That's correct.
Okay, all right, thank you. And just in relation to this notification about this meeting on today, Graham seemed to have some concerns about late notice on that. What can you give us some explanation to that, or was it?
So when the agenda was made public, that was provided, a link to that was provided to Mr. Derek, and also confirmation of the ability to speak in public forum for the meeting.
Right. And the other question I had was Waikato Tainui and confirmation of their approval.
Yes, so we have sent that through to Mr. Derek this afternoon.
Right,
but
and we do hold that, it is in writing? And
yes, we do.
Okay. Sorry, right, thank you. And Deanne,
So
you were going to...
With regards to the community facilities review, staff have engaged on a number of occasions with the Enderley Community Centre. Prior to the report that was taken to the April Strategy and Policy Committee requesting a working group be established to complete the review. We did engage with the community there, and on a couple of occasions, Councillor Chesterman has also attended those meetings and provided the same correspondence.
Yes, that's right. It's sort of a work in progress.
That's correct. So a report will be coming back to Council next month with regards to the
right.
outcome of the working group.
Can I just check then, just in terms then of concerns raised about our statutory and mandatory process and the feeling that we haven't followed that, are you both satisfied that we have followed the legal process required and the timeframes required? Because that seems to be a big concern here.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. All right, councillors, any other questions on this? Councillor Mallett.
And it's following on from what you're saying there, Your Worship. Just on point 13, you say that you met with a group, and your commentary here is, unfortunately, following discussions, it remained unclear what their specific objection was. To the extent that Mr. Derrick spoke English before, his concern, because it was raised, his concern was, it seemed to be a process, and I appreciate it didn't have much time to expand on that. As far as you're aware, and I suppose we can just ask him, but as far as you're aware, that is the issue, or is there a substantive issue where he's getting confused is the wrong word, but I understand there is a review of the governance of the facility there. Is there some, as opposed to a changing the nature of the park?
If I may, through the chair, when staff did engage with Mr. Derrick's group, there was a number of them that attended, and both myself and Renee actually attended to get some clarification around what the objection was to the reclassification.
Your report suggests that you don't know.
Yeah,
Still don't
we
know.
as staff came away still unclear what that objection was.
Have you got correspondence from it?
We did receive some correspondence, that's correct.
And that was unclear also?
Yes, that's correct. And when we actually spoke with the wider group to give some clarity around why the reclassification was being put forward, which actually gives a broader use of the community facility, which is actually in the best interest for that community, that gives wider use moving forward. So we mentioned that a number of times in that discussion, so I'm not sure whether they understood that clearly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Gallagher and then Councillor
It's actually
McPherson.
just on the other Lake Rotokauri Park, just wanted to think it would be advisable that you just make a minute note that I actually am a member of the Lake Rotokauri Management Advisory Committee of the Waikato District Council, and albeit I don't think there's any conflict issue at all, but it's just perhaps I just bring that to your attention.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McPherson.
Yes, it's in relation to the reclassification of Enderley Park to the local purpose community facilities. My understanding of the normal requirements is unless the building and the land are part and parcel, I'm talking colloquially here, not using, because the legal people can do that, the other side here, there for the same purpose, like a rugby club beside a rugby ground, which this was way back about 20 years ago, then you can't actually use it for a different purpose unless you change the classification. So for 20 years we've been using it as a community centre, wrongly classified, because I'm thinking of the steps that a couple of other community centres that are situated on parks have had to go through to get changes in classification in place before they were able to do what they were doing, like the Western Community Centre, for instance. Are we saying that the council's own facility, we didn't put that requirement on them and we've just realised now, or why is it coming up now, that change of classification?
So if I may, through the chair, we do have one group that's been in there for a number of years that have been operating a service out of there. And actually moving through the community occupancy policy, that's when we noted that actually some of their activity doesn't actually comply with the Reserves Act, hence the reason why that we are going through the reclassification.
And none of it, in fact, because it wasn't the rugby club that was on there at the start.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, ultimately the facility was a rugby club, sports club. Yeah.
When it was bought under the mayor at the time, I'm just trying to remember her name, HCC, but they what I mean. So that should have been done then.
Yeah.
Properly. Okay, thanks.
Councillor Pascoe?
Yes, question about the Rotokauri Park. What's that currently used for?
Just in terms of the park itself, it's just an area where people can go and walk around Lake Rotokauri and provide access to that. So it's, if I can use the term, a passive park. It's just an access point through to the lake.
So it has been used for what purpose was intended back in 2002. It hasn't been kind of used for anything else. I'm just a little concerned that it's taken this long to get it to where it should have gone in 2003
and
perhaps.
100% agree with your concerns, and that the alignment, I'm not sure why the alignment of those reserves in that area has not been done earlier, but as a review of our management plans, that's why we found this. So that's why we'd like to align it.
And it's the word is alignment cross border, but your point in terms of time is noted.
Yes.
Yep. The other question is around the costs, and it just seems to me to be $1,250 seems a little on the light side for the survey as well. I think it's the survey of Enderley and the gazetting of the Rotokauri Park. Are those costs, in fact, what the costs are? Or
Yes, they have been estimated on true costs, so that's what we're anticipating.
All right, thank you.
Councillor Forsyth, I've got.
Thank you. Thanks, Sally. Just around the consultation, it's the fact that we haven't had much participation from the public about reclassification. So what sort of consultation have we done apart from gazettes, is it?
No, the Gazette is the final process, so that is the final notice. So these were publicly advertised, which is part of the process that we need to follow. And we also talk to key stakeholders on those locations as well. So
Advertised in the newspaper? Or?
yes, it is. And in terms of, to be fair in history, in terms of reclassification, we generally do not get a lot of responses to this.
Okay. And look, just one other question which applies to both. Does the change in classification for either or both change anyone's access or ability to do what they would normally do now? So could I walk my dog? Presumably I could walk my dog on the Rotokauri Park. Does the change in
No, it will not change.
classification?
It will not change in your existing use now.
Okay, and that
What-
applies to both?
Yes, it does. And what it provides, I think, with Enderley is ensuring that the current uses and any future uses actually fit with the classification. So it provides us with more opportunities.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor McPherson, you had another?
Yes, sorry, in fact, it follows that quite neatly, really. In terms of if the Enderley reclassification goes through, does that make it easier for us to, for instance, lease or sell the building, I'm not talking about the land, to third party, another party for local purposes use, anything that's defined as that, such as a medical centre or a charter school or something like that? Is that something they couldn't do now legally, but could do following?
That's correct. I mean, ultimately, it just gives a broader range of use for the facility, so it doesn't actually limit what can actually happen within that community.
Right
or whoever
now,
users are.
council, apart from perhaps the issue of existing user rights, which may or may not be allowable, we couldn't get rid of that to someone else in a leasing or selling sense for a purpose that wasn't strictly related to the park, really, in a physical sense.
Yes, that's correct.
Thanks.
Okay, Councillor King, did you have?
When did Mr. Derrick ask for the documents shown Tanu's approval?
That request was received today.
So you got the request off him today?
Yes.
You responded today? Have you
Yes.
hand-delivered a copy to him?
No, we haven't. We've sent it through before this meeting, so we responded to the email correspondence requesting it.
You could give them a hard copy
Yep.
today.
Yeah, we
though.
can do.
Yeah, good.
Thank you.
Right, no other questions? So councillors, there's a motion here. Recommendation on page 36, I'm happy to move that.
Your Worship, could I ask if the two could be done separately?
Oh, fine, yes. So I'll move that the report be received. A second on that. All those in favour? Any against? Carried. Next item is the moving of the reclassification of Enderley Park as set out on page 36. Have I got a seconder for that? The Deputy Mayor? Right, is there any debate on that? Councillor McPherson.
Yes, Your Worship, given some of the answers to the questions, and I certainly don't totally take on board the answers, I think they were quite helpful to provide more information, but I'm now, and I didn't actually hear the submission, though I have read the notes, I'm now uncomfortable that with us going ahead with this reclassification out at Enderley without us having a better understanding of what the potential future uses are. And I do understand there are some in the pipeline in a sort of an informal sense. I'm not saying anyone's actually approached council. I actually have no idea either way on that. But I am aware of the talk around the traps. And I believe that the community out there there needs to be a bit of extra consultation out there. There's no problems. The council's done nothing wrong, but I think we need to go the extra mile on this area out there. That's been a fraught community centre and a fraught area for a long time. And while there were some difficulties in what we heard from Mr Derrick, I'm mindful that his organisation actually led the charge in that area about 5 years ago against a liquor store being established there, which they felt would be deleterious to the community's interests out there, quite rightly, and got a lot of support and actually got the application withdrawn. There were even a couple of councillors that marched with them on that day there. And I do think that group, while sometimes I would accept they're difficult to understand exactly what they're trying to say to us, that they nevertheless are doing things on behalf of the community out there with good intentions. And I would like to find out more about the whole area, the reasons for their objections, the potential future use of that community centre, which council bought from the Eastern Suburbs Rugby Club 20 odd years ago. We didn't buy it because they were going bust. Well, they were, but we bought it because we could see a need in the community for a facility like that. And to change the status now, sure, it may clean up some legal things, but I think that we just need to have another look at that one before we proceed. I'm not long-term opposed to that, but I would like to see a bit more in-depth discussion in the Policy and Strategy Committee with a bit more of a report from Council and to actually understand genuinely where some of these groups are coming from. I don't know whether that, given that it's taken 20 years to get to this point, whether that hurts Council very much to wait 2 or 3 months for a second bite at that report and just see if we can get to the bottom of a few issues there. So I'm not suggesting actually, Your Worship, that we vote against it. I'm probably suggesting in a procedural sense that we defer it to a future meeting.
Right, any other speakers for or against? Yes, Councillor Deputy Mayor.
Yes, perhaps if I can give a more recent snapshot of the history. It started off with consideration by several groups about wanting to take over responsibility for the Enderley Centre. And I attended a couple of meetings, and the outcome was that it was decided that instead of looking at the Enderley Centre in isolation, that a subcommittee would be set up to review all of the community facilities. And when that was initially done, that was communicated to Graham. When that was originally done, it sounded like a simple exercise. But in fact, the report back from staff was that it raised a whole lot of complex issues about very different facilities. So at the moment, the Community Facilities Subcommittee, I think Councillor Gallagher, myself, look, there are, I think, 2 other councillors, and they can help me with identifying themselves, are currently going through that process, which is some months off, I suggest.
if I may through the chair, the report is coming back to council next month on 10th of December.
Oh, you must have missed some meetings, Gordon.
So sorry, Deputy Mayor.
So the point I was just making was that, as has been identified right at the start, there were two processes here, the classification of Enderley Park and separately the ongoing use of the park centre. And we've got to get that right.
Right, any other speakers for or against?
Your Worship, I'm wondering if I'd like to move a resolution that... No,
There's a motion.
an amendment, I should say, sorry, to B.
You can do that. Can you move an amendment when you've spoken? You can.
Technically, no, if you've spoken to the motion and not flagged an amendment while you're speaking to the motion, then
Well, I
it's
did
out of
flag
order.
a procedural point, specifically flagged that I felt it should be deferred, which is the what I want to move. Which,
You know, I suppose, though, Councillor McPherson, you didn't signal that you actually want to do an amendment. I take your point, what you were saying. So has anyone else got an amendment?
If Councillor McPherson would like to approach me, I'm happy to put an amendment to get it on the floor.
consider yourself approached.
Right. Could you
What-
advise
what's
what the amendment you would like me to move?
What's the amendment?
That item B, if I could help my colleague, that item B be deferred until the report by staff to the February meeting of the Strategy and Policy Committee.
Right, I'll also move that, so that puts it on the floor if I, through the chair, if I have a seconder.
Am I allowed to second it, Your Worship?
Democracy Manager.
Technically not,
No,
Madam Chair.
This technically not.
no. Is there a seconder for that?
I'll second that.
Councillor King is seconding it. Okay, Jude, you got that?
Yes, I have, and I'm assuming that's the procedural motion that gets put,
Is it a procedural motion or is it
that
just an
the item
amendment?
gets deferred.
What is it? Councillor Gallagher, what?
No, I don't see that as a procedural motion. I see that as a process. So we're responding
an
to a
amendment.
process
Yeah, it's an
suggestion, right? So
Okay.
I think it's
Right,
certainly
so
up
we
to
have a
debate.
motion and an amendment, and I think we're clear on what those are. So are there any other speakers for or against amendment or motion? Yes.
Just a point of clarification, that we're only dealing with Enderley at the moment, aren't we?
We
So
are.
so it's
Yes,
just to
correct.
delay it till sometime.
Yeah, February.
So any others, sorry? Yeah?
Yeah, look, I think the same outcome can be achieved with the reclassification anyway. I think there's, from the work that the Community Facilities Group, well, staff have been doing in that space, there's ongoing engagement, and I can't see the point in delaying things, so I'm going to support the motion.
Okay. Any other speakers? Look, I'll speak for the motion. The change in classification was notified back in July, and I guess the discussion we're having today probably should have been had in July, because we wouldn't have started the process. Because the process is one where, you know, it's under the legislation, it's got to be notified, people have to, you know, give their views on it, and my understanding here with Enderley was there was only one party that expressed a view on the reclassification, and that was Graham's group. Yeah. So I think from a process point of view, if there were some doubts about reclassification, July was the time to kind of raise them before we started down the journey. I take the point that's been raised in the public forum about I understood the issues raised by Graham, I'm looking at him, he's nodding, were predominantly about process. Yes, he's nodding at the back as well. He's got a view, right or wrong, that the council hasn't followed the right process in doing this reclassification, and information that he wanted to see. It's not about the reclassification as such, or whether that's got merit or not. Yep, I think I've summed you right. He's nodding. So that's one aspect of it. The second aspect is, you know, all of us know there's been lots of talk around this area for some time in different groups, and a number of councillors have attended different meetings with different groups. And I think all of those discussions and all of those meetings point to a need to reclassify the park on its face, the merits of it, point to that, because of the flexibility that will enable for what can go on in that community and the various groups who want to do stuff in that community who can't because of some prohibitions on the current classification. Taking your point that there are things already happening that probably don't comply with the current classification. So I think process-wise, on the journey, July was a time for deciding not to do this, and secondly, there's merit in the classification. So for those reasons, I think this is the right thing to do. The community facilities discussion is going to come back to council, and I think there will be a lot of discussion amongst councillors about that, and I'm sure there will be some work that will spin off that. And I think then, you know, that can take on a more focused discussion because the reclassification will be done. Right. Any other speakers? Okay, Councillor King.
You've been communicating with Mr Graham during your speech. Now that Mr Graham, if it's purely a process matter, now that Mr Graham has been given that letter from Tainui, is he satisfied now with the process?
I don't know. I didn't hear his document and his public forum speak that it was only about that issue. That's not how I interpreted it. So have you got...
You were the chair, you were communicating during your speech
No,
with
no,
Mr
I wasn't.
Graham. I'm asking, yes you were. He was
Oh,
nodding, and
I'm
you were
just saying he was
taking
nodding
that as
because I can
yes.
see him.
So
Yeah.
I'm just asking, could you as a chair ask Mr Graham whether he's satisfied now with the process?
Sorry, Councillor King, I misinterpreted what you're saying. You want to know whether his process issues are sorted by the receiving of the Tainui
Yeah.
confirmation. Can you just check, Renee, does that cover the process issue? I didn't...
Yeah, we haven't actually given him the letter from Tainui in hard copy now.
Okay.
Imagine you can read the email.
Right.
No.
Okay. So I think that the question is that alone, is it only that issue that satisfies the process issues or not? No, it's not, no. So the answer, Councillor King, is no, it doesn't satisfy his process issues, no. All right, any other speakers for or against? Right, we're going to vote, and we're voting on the amendment first, which is on the board there.
The amendment is lost, 2 for and 9 against.
Okay. So we're now voting on the motion.
Motion is carried, 10 votes for and 1 against.
Right, the next one is in relation to Rotokauri Park, and I'll move that reclassification, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Does anyone wish to speak for or against? No? Okay, so we're going to go to the board, we're voting on that.
And I take it that's just through the city secretary. My note will be sufficient.
Correct.
Well, yeah, thank you.
Was there some information we don't know? What was his name?
Carried unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Right, the next item is item 10, page 42. And this is the alcohol policy that was moved up to the council from strategy and policy. The councillors, some councillors have just raised, just to get clear on process here, so I just checked with Jude. It was a procedural motion that brought it up here, Jude, so that means what in terms of existing motions that came from strategy and policy?
What that means is the complete item is now before the council.
Okay.
So it's council's now as the decision-making body to make a call on the complete policy.
Right, so are there any questions? People are clear on that? Yes, Councillor Mallett?
So the recommendation from the S&P meeting is which one? That there be a one-way door and that the shorter hours for the,
No.
is that right?
No,
It's just a staff report.
no, this is, well, the Strategy and Policy Committee voted on items and made decisions.
And then didn't they say we'd move it? Sorry,
Yes, and then it's come moved up here, and I've just got you to
But is it the,
confirm, because this is precisely why I got
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
that any motions can,
All items are up for discussion.
any motions
potentially.
can be put.
so there's not a recommendation
No.
coming to
No.
us from S&P? Okay,
Any,
so-
any motions can be put,
Is it,
all
it's
right?
as if nothing's on the table?
Yeah.
So are we essentially starting with the original motion that we had at S&P? That's the
Well,
effect.
no, you've got a staff report here,
Yep.
and they have encapsulated the motions from Strategy and Policy, and they are making a recommendation. But what Judith's confirmed is that this council can put any motions on the floor for debate. Okay? Any changes?
You could move the council,
Yeah.
the staff report's recommendation.
You could indeed. And so that's the first thing. Second thing, I just want to get Kelvin just to clarify, because again, some councillors have said, oh, what happens if we have no policy? Okay, so I've asked Kelvin just to clarify, if you look at paragraph 22, it says there that the staff would just clarify what would happen if we had no policy, i.e. the Act would prevail.
That's correct.
And we've never really talked about that, so I thought it might be useful just to understand what that might mean with some of these key points. So could you just enlighten us, Kelvin, thanks?
Thank you, Your Worship. You are correct. The Act and the default provisions within the Act would apply, and there are four principal areas. The first is that we would have no specific location or density provisions. Second, we would be subject to the default maximum trading hours, which, to remind, if for an on-licence is 8 a.m. to 4 a.m., and that is would be across the entire city. It is not location specific. And off licence would be 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. Third would be no ability to institute a one-way door restriction across the entirety of an area. And the fourth and final one is that in the absence of an LAP, every decision that the DLC would make in relation to hours or locations could be subject to appeal to the Alcohol Regulatory Licensing Authority.
Right, so just a question on that. If we have the policy then that sets hours, then that means that the DA can issue licences within those hours and you can't appeal.
Correct. Well, once the LAP's been adopted and we've got through the 30-day appeal provision.
Right, whereas if you have the Act, then everything's up for appeal, including those hours.
Continuously.
Yes, okay, all right, that's helpful. So councillors, questions on what you've heard here? Any questions for Kelvin?
So just so I've got this, what I just, if I can, Jude or Kelvin, item 3, it seems to me that there's a whole lot of stuff that was agreed, but there are 3 points, if you like, there are 3 points of contention. So can I just clarify that wording? Just re-clarify the wording, please, if you would.
So what, sorry, what do you mean,
Reflecting the
Councillor
3, your recommendations from management,
What does that mean?
so basically, just so I've got this right, reflecting the 3 matters determined on the 3rd of November.
Right.
So those are the 3 matters that passed, but they didn't get through on the substantive overall motion.
Correct. So the recommendation from staff is that does become embedded into the draft LAP, which would be up for consideration potentially by council.
So yeah, but is that your recommendation, or are you giving a process recommendation? Because see what I mean? I mean, if I've got this right,
It's a process recommendation.
process recommendation, and then basically the people would then put up, if that was moved, then obviously there can be amendments to each of those, and then they are determined, and then essentially the rest, everything else is landed, basically. I
Yes.
mean, these are the three, as I understand it, these are the 3 points of contention. The rest is fairly
These were the 3 areas of
Yeah, all right.
contention from the 3 November meeting, correct?
right.
So councillors, also Councillor O'Leary signalled to me prior to the meeting that she was intending to move the staff recommendation. So unless there are no other questions on the default provisions in the Act, I'm intending to take that motion now.
Sorry, in terms of point of process,
Yep.
and this is an unusual one, we had a chair of a committee that wasn't able to recommend to council. Is there anything additional he would want to add? In other words, this has come from strategy and policy. Councillor King was in the chair at the time.
So no, but that's the point, I think, Councillor Gill. It's not like a recommendation
Yes.
from the
Well, there's
the
no
committee. That's the point that I was
Yeah.
getting due to clarify. It's the effect of the resolution is it's basically picked up and put into this one, and as Jude said, any motions can be put on the table again. I think that Dave.
Okay, well, I'd like to put one forward then.
I'll second Councillor O'Leary's.
Right, thank you.
Recommendation.
So, sorry, is it a question,
It was
Councillor?
a procedural question
Yep.
to you at this point before we go ahead with the motion.
Yep.
I accept I wasn't here at the start of the meeting where this may have been raised. Were any declarations of interest in relation to this item made at the start of the meeting in relation to financial interest?
In this item, no.
Okay.
Yes, there was.
Not on this item.
Councillor Green?
No, at the beginning of this meeting.
Oh, sorry, this is
Certainly
today.
not to me.
Sorry, I did mean today, Your Worship,
Yeah,
sorry.
No, I've received nothing.
Okay,
Did
so,
you receive anything?
I'm aware.
No, Madam Chair, no declarations of interest relating to this item.
Through you, Madam Chair, I would ask councillors that may be involved to make declarations. I think in this issue it's important because they're a matter of public record already at previous meetings, declarations of interest. So I would like them made again before this item proceeds any further.
Sorry, Your Worship, just a point of
Sorry,
clarity.
no, just wait. I'm not quite sure. Are you asking for any councillors who believe they have a declaration of interest in relation to a financial interest in
No,
what
in
this
relation
policy is about?
Yes, yeah, in relation to having received money during election campaign for this, which has been made before. It's not a new thing. So I just, for the record, I feel that should be made at this meeting as well
Your
as the
Worship,
previous
I
one.
think, yes, sorry.
Sorry, Your Worship, in light of Councillor McPherson's reference, it has triggered a memory that I received a loan from the Lawrenson Group that I declared on my electoral declaration for the last election, but I do not deem that to be a conflict of interest or a pecuniary interest, but for...
I haven't raised it in the conflict situation, Your Worship.
For clarity, I'm certainly...
I'm just checking. So what's the position with declarations of interest, Jude? It is up to each member to identify.
each member.
What is a declaration of interest? What's a good definition of it?
Well, I think standing orders do.
What does it say?
It talks about a pecuniary interest that is greater than in common with the public, and it also talks about a non-pecuniary interest where it's not a financial interest, but a member needs to come in with an open mind, and that talks about bias and predetermination.
Right.
But you're correct, Madam Chair, it's up to each individual member to make a declaration.
Okay.
Your Worship, Councillor McPherson needs to be direct with his comments. He is directing his query or his question to me.
Not just
I
to
have,
you.
well, obviously to Councillor Wilson now. It's public knowledge and in the register that I received a election donation from Good George Brewery. But I've never, throughout this entire process, declared a conflict of interest. I made a statement.
Point of order, Your Worship. I have made it clear twice now that I'm not relating to anything to a conflict of interest.
no,
I haven't mentioned that.
Correct.
It's to a declaration of interest.
Yes, correct. And I don't think Councillor O'Leary was
Well,
making...
she's just mentioned the conflict of interest.
Yes, but she, in the course of her, what she's done, and that's perfectly okay. So carry on.
Thanks.
Well, yeah, there's nothing... Look, I don't know what else to say. He needs to be direct with his comments.
No, I just want you to record it.
Well, that's my decision to make right throughout this process. I've made it aware that it's public knowledge. I'm not declaring anything because I don't have a conflict of interest. I've been on this council for 8 years. Since day one, I have been 100% consistent in my support of hospitality. There's nothing else to say.
Okay, thank you. Right, so councillor, I've got
Declaration,
a
declaration.
declaration
Thank you.
of interest. Councillor Gallagher, what is that?
Yes, I have many good friends who might contribute in small or medium amounts to my campaign. I don't have an insight into
So
what
what's your
shareholdings they
declaration of
may or may
interest?
not have. But secondly, I think what's significant is I also note I obviously sit on the DHB, and of course we have Population Health making a submission. I don't think there's any conflict at all because they, of course, give advice that is thoroughly independent, albeit broadly supported by DHB, but I don't think that interferes with the open mind test.
So are you asking it to be noted that you have a declaration of interest in relation to sitting on
Well,
the
I
DHB?
think a minute, I've just noted that I sit on a board of the District Health Board, which a division of the DHB was a submitter.
You know, I suppose, just so that we're clear here, councillors, the question for yourselves individually is, for you alone, is for when we deal with an item, if you believe you have an interest in that item of the nature that you described, you should signal it, but it is your choice and your choice alone to do that. So you either are doing it or you're not doing it. So
No,
councillor Gallagher, is that
I'm
right?
doing that, but I'm actually
I've
saying
got it.
that doesn't prevent me. It'd be
No.
good to have the city solicitor here. That does not prevent me from participating in this process.
Right, are there any other people who wish to note a declaration of interest? Councillor Mallett.
No, I don't have just a question of Dave. Pardon?
Shiraz. You must declare.
Well, at $8 a bottle, mate, I've got an interest, a big interest. Just with the question for Dave, Angela's said it and some other people have said it too, that they, and we all put in expense claims when we, what do you call those things, notification of expenses for elections. Are you asking over and above that?
No, I'm asking for the same.
So you're just wanting us to trot out what we wrote, what the whole public have seen
No.
2 years ago?
In relation to the industry that we're debating a policy on.
Yeah, but if anyone wants to look at anyone's expense claims during the election, they all see Angela O'Leary will have a figure that says something from some brewery. Yeah,
All right, so
someone.
councillor-
And I haven't,
I think-
the reason, I might
No,
say,
so-
Your Worship, that if
No,
I...
sorry.
But that's
sorry.
already disclosed.
Well, I've been
Councillor-
asked a question,
Councillor
Your Worship.
McPherson, stop. I think actually it's really clear. So the question I've asked is there any other councillors who wish to raise a declaration of interest? And if not, right, we've finished with that matter. So councillors, as I said, there's been a motion moved by Councillor O'Leary and seconded by Councillor Wilson. Can we just get that on the board? Thank you. Oops.
I have an amendment.
You have an amendment? Okay. Did you signal, have you given that wording to Jude?
I'm just wanting to make sure that I understand this process correctly. So you're saying that we can start all over again?
Yes.
I'd like to move the one-way door policy, basically.
Sorry, Your Worship, I'm sorry.
No, just
As an
wait.
amendment.
Right, Democracy Manager, we have an amendment here. What is the amendment, please?
That a one-way door restriction will apply to on licences in the central city zone from 2 a.m. Monday to Sunday for a period of 12 months from the date this policy comes into force. If monitoring and evaluation demonstrate a reduction in alcohol-related harm in the central city, Council will resolve to continue the restrictions on a permanent basis.
So you are reading from a particular section
Yep.
on the report?
From the draft LAP, page 43, item 13, bold 6. And then the one-way door restriction is defined as A and B.
So Jude, have you got that?
Clarify, it's paragraph 13, item 1, one-way door, the italicised.
Yes.
Starting at one-way door and finishing at alcohol, full stop.
So is there a seconder for that? Is there a seconder for that amendment?
I'll second that amendment.
Okay,
to get it
councillor
on the table.
McPherson is seconding it, thanks.
Excuse me, Your Worship, just a clarification. At the moment, there is a motion, is that right? And that's the motion, the staff recommendation on page 42, A through D. Is that right?
Yes, I've
Okay,
got a
thank you.
mover and a seconder for that.
So who are the mover and seconder?
Councillor O'Leary and councillor Wilson.
Okay, thank you.
And now we have an amendment which
Just wondering
is
what the amendment was to.
to insert a one-way door policy
Thank you.
restriction, a one-way door restriction.
Your Worship,
we just have wording?
as a point of process, Your Worship, could I ask, as we did at or tried to do at the strategy and policy meeting, that when the issues are identified, that we deal with them one by one until we...
Oh, no, absolutely.
Thank you.
We'll be dealing with them
Your
one by
Worship,
one.
with your leave, I wonder if I could
But
just
not,
have...
the motion on the table is not capable
Sure.
of separation because it's the whole.
Understand that...
So then, if I wonder if I could just have that wording read out, because I
It's
may
going
or
to be
may
put
not...
on the screen? Yes, we're
I
just
may or
getting
may
it
not
typed up.
give notice of a further amendment.
Councillors, what I'm going to do is actually break for a cup of tea because we have an update on the Hamilton Gardens, and so I think now's the time. If you have amendments for shadowed amendments, can you please get the wording to Jude so that she can get it typed up and ready to go, and it saves a lot of time. So we're going to break for a cup of tea and we're going to come back at 22:04. Thank you.